Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your viceroy of verisimilitude, your master of fun and wonder, your sommelier of science fiction, your existential Mr. Rogers, and of course, your Duke of Dope Discourse, Mr. Robert Meyer Burnett, here with Robservations, the show about something, episode number 357. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, Rob casting at you from this, the Robservatory. I know, everyone says, how silly, how full of myself am I? I don't know. You tell me. I'm just trying to have a good time and make you smile in the process. You, all of you imagination connoisseurs, all of you members of this, the Post-Geek Singularity community, welcome to Tuesday. And let's hope we're going to have another discussion of all things of interest to anyone who is an imagination connoisseur. First of all, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to shout out, big congratulations to Mark Bernardin. Mark Bernardin, as many people know, has been doing podcasts with Kevin Smith for a very long time. He is an excellent entertainment writer, and he is a writer of all things television, movies, media, all of those things. He is now the new supervising producer of Star Trek Picard. And I think, being that he's one of us, he's an imagination connoisseur, and he tells a great story of writing a spec script for Star Trek The Next Generation back in the day, which actually won him an award. It was not produced, of course, but now he's working on Star Trek Picard. I would say this is an epic win, not just for Mark, not just for us, hopefully, but for the franchise in general. It's exactly the kind of person they should be hiring. So kudos to Mark. Congratulations on being a new supervising producer on Star Trek Picard. Well, ladies and gentlemen, a lot of things I've been thinking about. I don't know if you guys have heard of Quibi, but Quibi is the brainchild, I guess you could say it's the brainchild of Jeffrey Katzenberg. Jeffrey Katzenberg, of course, hey, he was one of the executives on Star Trek The Motion Picture. While at Paramount, yes, that was just a sneeze, ladies and gentlemen. Don't worry, nothing's happening to me. But it's just dusty in here because I've been moving stuff around. So Jeffrey Katzenberg obviously started DreamWorks with Steven Spielberg, worked as an executive for Paramount, was at Disney, very successful. He has a new venture called Quibi, and he's been working on this for a long time. Quibi, because of Jeffrey Katzenberg and May, the woman who used to run eBay, May Whitman, is that her name? Well, they've started Quibi, and what Quibi is a new entertainment, it's a new streaming service, basically. But the model of Quibi is everything is under 10 minutes long. And because of Katzenberg's his deep roots in the entertainment business and the fact that he knows just about everyone, he was able to get a lot of financing. They just got $750 million more financing, starting out with $1 billion. And basically what Quibi is doing is their thought was they were going to go after the YouTube crowd by making great entertainment. And there's sometimes, I'm going to read an article about it, but they're making all of their entertainment less than 10 minutes long. And the thought was that they would compete with the YouTube space. Well, and they've got a lot of A-list talent lined up to do it. A lot of A-list talent. And they're spending up to $175,000 a minute. So they've basically got, the healthiest kinds of budgets in the world. And they're hoping to compete with what YouTube can do. They want to compete in that space. And their thought is that you're going to consume their lavishly produced programming on your tablet or on your phone. When you're on the go, the thing that's on your mind is watching great content, and Quibi is going to give it to you. Now, I don't know if any of you saw the Quibi ad on the Super Bowl, which, well, you know what? I'm just going to read the article. Let's just get right into it. Now, this is an older article that I'm going to read here, but definitely worth reading, and I have a lot to say about this. Quibi tries to explain what Quibi is in a new Super Bowl commercial. This was on The Verge. It was on January 31st by Julia Alexander. Now, I can't play their commercial, but it's called Bank Heist, and I strongly suggest everyone go watch it. Quibi understands that most people are probably still unaware of what Quibi is. But the streaming service run by Jeffrey Katzenberg and Meg Whitman is hoping a new Super Bowl commercial will clear things up. The commercial is based on a bank heist gone wrong, leaving the robbers with 4 to 10 minutes to spare, the perfect amount of time to watch Quibi, according to Quibi's press release. The getaway car can't meet his bank robber friends because he's in the middle of a Quibi show, and another member of the crew soon finds himself enamored with Chance the Rapper's Punk'd series. Yes, Quibi's bringing back Punk'd in under 10-minute segments, hosted by Ashton Kutcher. None of this really describes what Quibi is, though. The mobile streaming service will run short-form entertainment from some of Hollywood's biggest creators, stars, and up-and-coming influencers. Each episode of the series will run between 4 and 10 minutes, a time period that Whitman previously described as the equivalent to waiting for coffee. Quibi's slate is already pretty impressive. Zac Efron, Idris Elba, Kristen Bell, Chrissy Teigen, Kendall Jenner, Tyra Banks, Steph Curry, 50 Cent, and Avengers Endgame directors Anthony and Joe Russo all have original Quibi series in the works. Disclosure, Vox Media, which owns The Verge, has a deal with Quibi to produce a Polygon daily essential, and there have been early talks about a Verge show. Ask Katzenberg and Whitman, and they'll tell you they're not competing with Netflix or Hulu or Disney+. Instead, they're competing for attention people spend on apps like YouTube or Instagram. The goal is to roll out highly produced series that favor quality over quantity. If YouTube is home to plentiful content that boasts more than 500 hours of video being uploaded every minute, Quibi will be home to a slightly more curated selection of productions. Some of those projects will cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to make, reaching as much as $125,000 a minute. That works out to be $7.5 million an episode, on par with early Game of Thrones episodes. One of the biggest hurdles Quibi will have to face, however, is getting people to sign up. The streaming service will cost $4.99 a month with ads and $7.99 a month without ads. That's higher than Disney Plus and Apple TV Plus, which boast big Hollywood stars and movie franchises and massive franchises. Quibi is teaming up with T-Mobile to bring more customers on board, but it's unclear what that deal looks like. When Disney Plus launched, it was made free to Verizon customers for a year. Verizon recently reported that having Disney Plus helped boost subscribers in its recent financial quarter. Now remember that. Still, the age-old line in Hollywood is, don't bet against Jeffrey Katzenberg. Stars like Chrissy Teigen have already used their impressive social media status to tell fans Quibi is available to pre-order in the App Store. Quibi officially launches on April 6th. And hey, even if it isn't a rousing success from the start, at least the Super Bowl commercial gave us, I'll be there in a Quibi, in a new catchphrase. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll be there in a new Quibi. I'll be there in a Quibi is their new catchphrase. Well, let me just say that, my friends, is what I see as the single greatest problem with Quibi. They just created their own catchphrase. Their marketing department, I'm sure their very well-paid marketing department in terms of branding, has come up with a word like Quibi. Their title is now going to be, apparently, an increment of time less than 10 minutes. But rather than have that sort of developed naturally from the culture, such as Netflix and chill or any other meme that I talked about yesterday, they decided to call themselves that. They've decided to give you their own catchphrase, which, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, in a nutshell, is, to my mind, everything wrong with the concept of Quibi in the first place. Anyone who spends any time watching YouTube, indeed, who watches this show or John Campia's show or Joe Rogan or Dave Rubin or any of these long-form shows on YouTube, it is old thinking that people on YouTube only want to consume videos that are 4 to 10 minutes long. Hell, even the YouTube analytics want you to make videos a little bit more than 10 minutes long for their advertisers. This is old thinking. This is thinking that it reminds me of what happened in the mid 90s. I'll never forget. It was 1994. 94 was when the Image Comics creators came rolling in like Zeppelin at a concert in 1970. All those Image Comics creators came out conquering heroes. They had banded together. It was like Rob Liefeld and Jim Lee and Todd McFarlane and Jim Valentino and Will Portacio and Mark Silvestri. A lot of the top Marvel creators, thinking that they were undervalued, defected en masse and started Image Comics, which at first was a license to print money. Whether it was Liefeld's Youngblood, whether it was Jim Lee's Wildcats, or whether it was even Jim Valentino's comic. And then, of course, Spawn, McFarlane's Spawn, probably the most successful at launch. They were selling copies in the millions. And think about that they were making millions of dollars a month. And that was on one comic. So they were doing quite well. And it was an amazing thing to watch. So when they show up in 94, Rob Liefeld had a 1-to-1 scale Youngblood spaceship that he had built. Boy, as I've talked about before, one day he told me that story at Comic-Con at one of the parties that they were throwing, and it was listening to him tell the story of building a full-scale spaceship. One of the funniest things I've ever heard in my life, because he thought it was a great idea until he realized he hadn't really thought it through. And once you have a full-scale 1-to-1 spaceship, how do you move it? He hadn't really thought that up yet, but it was damn funny to listen to his story. Well, what happened in the wake of Image's success was there's a lot of companies, a lot of investors, Wall Street money even, that was throwing their money at the comic industry, thinking that, hey, it's anybody can get rich. Look at these guys. They're getting rich in comics. It must be the comic book medium that allows everybody to get rich. And, Leonard Nimoy had a comic. Jim Shooter started his own comic companies. Remember the comic Plasm? Do you remember that? I've got my copies. But so there's a lot of investors that jumped into the comic book market thinking that, hey, it's just a license to print money. Well, they quickly discovered it wasn't. What it was, the comic book industry, you made money back in the 90s if you were Jim Lee, Jim Valentino, Mark Silvestri, Will Portacio, Todd McFarlane. It was those guys that were making the money. It was those guys and their talent. Yes, they happened to work in the comics medium. They were famous in the comics medium. I mean, Liefeld was coming off the success of creating Deadpool and Cable and New Mutants. Jim Lee obviously had his amazing run on X-Men. Todd McFarlane was leaving Spider-Man, his beloved run on Spider-Man. I mean, these were people that were established in the industry. They were huge successes. Now, Meg Whitman coming over from, I believe it's eBay, right? Meg Whitman comes over from eBay, and Jeffrey Katzenberg, not exactly a man that I would say has the pulse on the youth of America. They want to pattern Quibi around YouTube. They've indeed hired YouTube influencers, YouTube stars. And they've even got people like Sophie Turner is in the new Quibi ad that I've just seen. By the way, she's looking mighty fine these days. Being off of Game of Thrones has certainly done well by her. And they're expecting that they're going to jump into this space with all of this money and all of these stars, Chrissy Teigen and Steph Curry. I mean, who isn't excited about watching their new 4 to 10 minute shows on Quibi? I think that there's a massive mistake that they've made. They're trying to jump into a space that they only understand from the outside. Now, I'm not saying I'm some oracle of fucking Delphi of YouTube. What do I know about YouTube? I've been on it for a very little amount of time. I'm certainly not pulling down great numbers or making tons of money on YouTube. I am not PewDiePie. I don't understand the analytics. Everything I know about YouTube, I asked John Campea to tell me. So, and then I watch, YouTube tutorials. Or I'll watch somebody like Shelby Church, a girl I didn't even know until something popped up in my YouTube feed of interest. And suddenly a 24-year-old girl who's been on YouTube since she was 14 tells me a lot more than I could possibly have learned on my own through her own experience over a decade of being on YouTube. So, by the way, Shelby, never met you. Just want to say you're a smart woman. I really appreciate what you did with your channel over the last 10 years. And you have, in fact, been an inspiration to me. So thank you for that. And I do appreciate the fact that you've really upped your game in terms of camera work, and you're a fine videographer. But anyway, the whole idea behind Quibi is, I think, like the comic book industry. You see a lot of people outside of that industry that don't really have a total understanding of what their market is. They think, oh, we're going to get celebrities and we're going to get A-list talent to make these 4 to 10 minute shows that people are going to watch, just like they watched YouTube. Well, look, I mean, why not? I mean, if you want to be on the cutting edge, why not go TikTok, and make your videos a lot less than 4 minutes? I mean, this idea, it seems to me that the whole idea behind Quibi is about a decade too late. They've been developing it for a long time, and they made, I think, a crucial, critical error. And, they've already borrowed a lot of money. They went and got $1 billion of financing. Then they're looking for $750 million more to create all this new content. But the thing is, here's what I learned very early on in my YouTube career when I was working on Collider Heroes. I was just a guest. I just walked in, sat down, said my piece, and left. And I got to work with the great John Schnepp. John Schnepp first brought me on, and that's where I met John Campea for the first time. And so I was frequently a guest on Collider Heroes with John and John. And after I started to work out, I mean, not work out like, not work out, but I started to work out that I could be an on-camera personality and interact with the two of them. They kept bringing me back, and I became a series regular. And by the way, next month, mid-April, represents my 5th year on YouTube. So maybe I should be a lot more successful on YouTube than I am. But hey, I've got this channel. I got you guys listening to me. So I think I'm a success no matter what you say. Then again, I'm not trying to spend almost $2 billion making programming to try and coerce you all to watching that programming. First of all, if you're spending money on incredible looking content where you're spending $125,000 a minute, I don't think you want that content necessarily, watched on a phone. The whole idea of the programming they're talking about is that it's a streaming service. They're teaming up with T-Mobile. I have T-Mobile. I love T-Mobile. I'm a huge, huge T-Mobile fan. All their programs, their Tuesday promotions. I love T-Mobile. So good on Quibi for partnering up with T-Mobile. But if it's content that's worth watching, that's really slickly made, I don't want to watch it on my phone. I want to go home. They're remaking The Fugitive, all right? With good programming, I like sitting in my bed, in my bedroom where my 65-inch TV is, and relaxing with Elizabeth and sitting down. We watch our favorite shows together on a big screen where I can concentrate. If they're really spending $7.5 million for a show on Quibi, I really don't want to be concentrating watching this kind of material on a screen that's tiny that I'm carrying around. I'd rather watch it on a big screen with a thunderous surround sound system. It's such a weird thing. What I learned on Collider, what I didn't say was, on Collider, when we would have guests that I would be very excited about, those were not necessarily, professionals, whether it was people that worked in the industry, entertainment industry, comic industry. We'd have these sometimes heavy hitters. You've seen, if you watch Collider, they get heavy hitters on there. But they were not our highest rated shows. Because in the YouTube space, I honestly believe that people, at least I think the people that, you watch, those of you who watch or listen to this show, I have a pretty dedicated audience. And I want to say, by the way, again, for all you imagination connoisseurs who watch these shows and share them, I want to thank you for that. But, one of the things, for whatever reason, I learned this on Collider, people tune in not to see necessarily big stars. John Campea will tell you that he stopped going to press junkets and doing that because press junket content did not necessarily bring in the amount of views that it took in terms of manpower and time. It didn't justify that. When everybody's doing that, it's not unique. The funny thing about the YouTube space, the thing that I've come to learn, and even through my own watching, I've talked about channels that I watch. Gemmint's channels, Geminites. That guy has a channel where all he does is look at Marvel omnibuses and comics that came out that week, and he does a good job, and statues. And I like that channel. I like that dude. He seems like he's a guy that I'll go hang out and have a beer with. I don't know if he drinks, but have a beer with. Talk comics. That's why I like to watch him, because I trust his opinion, because I've been watching him for a long time. He and I kind of think alike. If that's what people want. Now, okay, I get it. You want to start a new version of Punk'd that's hosted by Ashton Kutcher? Well, that's like Punk'd. They've done that. But as a 4 to 7 minute show, I'd rather go home and watch Punk'd where I can concentrate on it. I don't want to watch great content if I'm on a bus or I'm traveling, if I'm on a train or walking down the street. Maybe I can listen to a podcast or something, but you need to be able to see. When you're out in the world, really concentrating on something, especially if you're on a train. In New York, I was recently in New York and taking the subway. I'm always looking up, like, where's the stop at? I'm looking around at the people. You're constantly going like this. And they're spending all this great money on this incredible content. And I just see them as, I just don't think they get it. I could be wrong. Maybe Steph Curry's show will be a big hit. Chrissy Teigen's show will be a big hit. Maybe they'll all become zeitgeist hits, and I'll be wrong. But I just don't think necessarily that they've figured it out. And I'll tell you another thing. I'll be there in a Quibi. If you're marketing your own catchphrase to start with before you've even launched, I think you've kind of already lost. And I think the Burnett axiom, I always say that never put your universe or your agenda, your political agenda or whatever it is before your characters and story. That's Burnett axiom number 1. Burnett axiom number 2 is you cannot set out to make a cult film. You cannot set out to make a cult film. Just like Quibi cannot set out to make its own name a catchphrase. You can't do that. Now, if the general public had made it a catchphrase and then Quibi picked up on that later and used it, like Netflix and chill basically became a meme. But they're already telling you, I'll be there in a Quibi. I already hate it. I watched that Super Bowl ad when I was reading this article today, and I watched the Super Bowl ad, and I'm like, I hate you guys already. I hate you guys because you already are branding yourselves as like the cool thing. You can't do that. You can't make a cult movie. You can't set out to make a cult movie. The whole reason a cult movie becomes a cult movie is because it develops an audience. It develops an audience independently. The audience finds it. And I understand when you spend $2 billion, you got to come out guns blazing and you got to get the audience, you got to get them there. But they're already getting you there by telling you how cool they are by, hey, here's a catchphrase. We're so cool. You haven't seen our programming yet, but you'll be there in a Quibi. I want to punch the screen. I want to be like, come on, man. You can't tell me that you're cool. It's like when I was in college and everybody, called themselves, I understand it was college, but everybody fancied themselves an artist. I went to the Evergreen State College, the most crunchy, chewy, granola liberal arts college. I don't know. It was in the Pacific Northwest. Watch what happened. Go back and look what happened there in 2017. But in the mid-'80s, everyone walked around, I'm an artist, or it was woke before being woke. And I'm like, you can't. I understand we use the term artist. Oh, I'm an artist. Really, I'm more interested. I think being an artist is a title that's bestowed upon you by the world at large. Like you're a sculptor, you're a painter, you're a dancer, whatever it is you are. But are you an artist? I think that's for history and society to decide. At least that's what I've always thought. But anyway, with Quibi, they're already coming out of the gate going, I'll be there in a Quibi, trying to get everybody to go, I'll be there in a Quibi. And I think whatever marketing genius came up with that idea, again, I want to punch them in the face too. I know I wouldn't really do it because I don't want to get an assault charge. But I'm just saying it's these things have to happen organically. And on YouTube, they do. Things start small. Nobody jumps in. And I think, look, Robservations, the Robservatory, yeah, that's kind of wacky. It's fun. But, I still had to build up to it. I didn't start this show and I didn't say, hi, I'm Rob Burnett. Come to the Robservatory and watch me Robcast deep into your mind on the Night Circus. No, I didn't do that. I mean, maybe I kind of did, sort of, but it's all in good fun. But I'll see you in a Quibi is good fun created by a marketing department that's out of touch. I'm like, why doesn't Jeffree Star or Shane Dawson have a show? Well, maybe they do. I don't know. But I just think that I'm watching this. Now, what does all this have to do with anything? Well, let's move over now. Let's take a jump. Go with me. We're gonna jump over to the Hollywood Reporter and to Kim Masters. And Kim Masters today, 6 p.m. today, had an article. Why did Bob Iger's Disney announcement feel so rushed? I don't know, Kim. Kim Masters is a very esteemed writer, looks at the industry. As the company elevates Bob Chapek to the top job amid coronavirus fears and economic turmoil, his predecessor will still hold the creative reins like a CEO, but without the stress. Days after Bob Iger's February 25th resignation as CEO of Disney, the surprise move is still stuck in Hollywood's craw like a piece of gristle. I still can't get my brain around the abruptness, says a top executive. Having talked through the several theories floating around, he says, none of it adds up to me. Veteran Wall Street analyst Hal Vogel agrees. It was very unusual to come out with an announcement at 4 o'clock Eastern the day that Disney was being pounded in the market, he says. There were recent conference calls with quarterly earnings. You'd think there would have been a hint, at least they would have eased the way through this announcement. Instead, when the market is down sharply, all of a sudden he's resigned. The stock price has dropped sharply since then, which may provide hints about the reason for the hurry. Iger, who turned 69 on February 10th, contended that the move is only abrupt in other people's eyes because we haven't been talking about it publicly. The Disney board was well aware of his plans, he said, and his successor, Bob Chapek, had been chosen well in advance. Analyst Rich Greenfield can see why the storied Disney leader may have been ready to make a move after a Super Bowl year in 2019, but he too has questions. It makes all the sense in the world that Bob would have left sometime in 2020, Greenfield says. The only thing that nobody can explain is why it felt so rushed. The announcement blindsided top Disney executives, including direct-to-consumer chairman Kevin Meyer, top TV exec Peter Rice, and film studio chief Alan Horn. The three only learned of the change a few short hours before the rest of the world. The impact on morale at the highest levels is unknown, but it seems unlikely to be good. Also worth noting, having promoted Chapek to CEO, the company named no successor to run the theme parks. That would not seem to signal careful planning, especially with the coronavirus having already caused three parks overseas to close. The sense of haste seemed particularly out of character for Iger, who would be expected to design at least the appearance of a smooth, calm transition, because everything Bob has done is perfect, as a former Disney exec puts it. Iger is widely known as exceptionally image-conscious and deliberate about presentation. But when he and Chapek were interviewed together on CNBC, a couple of old Disney hands commented in separate conversations that the appearance seemed uncharacteristically slapped together. Bob is always groomed to perfection. He has a very specific on-camera appearance, says one. That was not the Bob we saw on CNBC. Disney has long been one of the darlings of the corporate world, but it's also true that the waters are starting to churn, and there's an argument to be made that Iger has just handed Chapek a pretty undesirable job. After a string of lauded acquisitions, Pixar, Marvel, Lucasfilm, Disney seems to be having trouble digesting the $71 billion acquisition of most of Fox. In an August earnings call, Iger blamed Fox for $175 million third quarter loss and said Disney was scrapping most of the film slate it had acquired. In September, he told the New York Times that Fox had problems before Disney bought it, saying, I'm convinced that the turnaround can happen. It's not snap your fingers, but it's not 10 years of lost value. It's a year and a half. That year and a half, if that's what it turns out to be, is packed with other challenges. There are questions about how Disney Plus is progressing in the wake of its impressive launch in November. That's where the company has put all of its marbles, and it reported a robust 26.6 million subscribers, or 28.6 million subscribers in its recent earnings call, but building a streaming service is a daunting task. Netflix had no competitors when it started, and it enjoyed lightning in a bottle hits right out of the gate. In 2020, making a bet on streaming means spending big while doing without traditional revenue sources and dealing with a lot of competition. Disney Plus hasn't been making much noise since the last episode of The Mandalorian dropped in December, Greenfield says. Citing a lack of new exclusive content, he adds, I would suspect viewership, especially among young adults to adults, has fallen meaningfully over the last 2 months. That matches recent data released by the Real Good app showing that viewers' use of Disney Plus declined in recent weeks while Netflix rose. Greenfield says Disney will need to flip that script to justify price increases that he says are inevitable given the unsustainably low cost of a subscription at launch, $7, and the freebies for Verizon subscribers. Despite Disney's wealth of cartoon characters, superheroes, and Jedi Knights, making the streaming service a must-have could be a more daunting challenge than many might have imagined. That might explain why Iger feels a need, as he said when announcing the transition, to focus on the creative side in his new role of executive chairman. Still, none of this explains the abruptness of the change. Okay, that's all I wanted to read of this particular article. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if you will bear with me, I'm going to jump to another article. Now, Garth Franklin published this on Dark Horizons today. It came out yesterday. I had heard this yesterday. Here goes. A proposed Tron TV series that was in development has reportedly been scrapped. A new feature piece in the Hollywood Reporter has gone into the Disney Plus service and it struggles to identify itself. But one of the most interesting bits of information within it is a throwaway line revealing a project no one had previously reported on. Namely, that 12 Years a Slave writer and American crime showrunner John Ridley, who, by the way, I love, he's a great novelist and a great screenwriter, was shepherding a TV series for the service that was set within the Tron universe. Come again? What? Now, as many of you know, I love Tron, and I made a feature-length documentary on the making of Tron that appeared on both the 2002 DVD, and it also appears on the Blu-ray for Tron. Tron, very proud of it. I directed it and edited it, did all the interviews, and so I'm attached to Tron. I'd never heard anything about this. Said universe began with the 1982 cult classic film and was followed up with 2010's Tron Legacy sequel and the animated 2012 series Tron Uprising. Ridley reportedly set up the project through his overall ABC Studios deal, but details of what it might have been about were not disclosed. Legacy director Joseph Kosinski had previously teased a third film, Tron Ascension, which would have been an invasion movie with the computer characters coming out into the human world. Now, I want to jump back to the Hollywood Reporter article. And let's see if it talks about, there's something I wanted to read. Well, as many people know, the Lizzie McGuire update that was announced on Disney Plus is something else that's fallen by the wayside. And you had Hilary Duff wanting to make it into something that was a little bit more adult, and they've tried to move it over to Hulu, of all places. Now, what I find interesting about all of this stuff is I see that there is a disconnect between what they want at the corporate level and the realities of what they're dealing with from us, the viewers, from us, the imagination connoisseurs, because they don't really know. Now, we've obviously seen, I don't want to get into a discussion about Disney Star Wars or Kathleen Kennedy or any of those things. But remember, Disney's Star Wars, since they took it over, has been mandated not by creative decisions, but by corporate decisions. First and foremost, corporate decision-making. What does Disney need from Star Wars? That's where they're coming from, They're not thinking about the Star Wars fan base, because to them, the Star Wars fan base is always going to show up. There's no such thing. The corporate mindset does not understand fandom. They just assume that fans are always going to be there. People, like when the attendance falls at baseball or NFL games, that becomes problematic, and they wonder, well, why is that happening? And they're trying to figure it out from a corporate standpoint, as opposed to boots on the ground, man on the street, or woman on the street, or non-binary people on the street, whatever you want to call it. They can't think that way, because corporations, they don't. They don't. And what's interesting is, we were talking on the John Campea show today, and I am convinced, again, this is total speculation on my part, the reason that Kevin Feige is such a great leader of the MCU, and the reason that they're able to, even when they make slight missteps, they're able to make course corrections, is that Kevin Feige is one of the rarest, maybe he's the only person in Hollywood who was an unabashed fan of the material he's creating now, but also worked his way up making comic book movies. He began working for Richard Donner, and then, of course, he worked on, as I've said a million times, 13 different Marvel movies before the MCU was even started, before Iron Man was started. All through the aughts, X-Men, Spider-Man, Daredevil, Elektra, Fantastic Four. Like, he worked on all these movies, and he saw what worked, and he saw what didn't work. And being a fanboy, and also growing into being a hell of a producer and really understanding what's going on, there's been really nobody like him, I think, in Hollywood history in the modern age. He was an imagination connoisseur that learned how to produce movies, but he learned how to produce movies specifically in the comic book space, which was interesting, that he moved in and he was able to start. Remember, the MCU did not start at Disney. It was starting at Paramount. He started the MCU with Iron Man over at Paramount. And so he understands both sides. And you don't see that there's no one else at that level was a fan and also a producer, a creator. So he can make these decisions. He inherently understands what's cool about something. And all of these other franchise leaders, look, Star Trek, Star Wars, Doctor Who. Right now, none of the people that are controlling, they say they are. They say they're fans, but look, Kirsten Beyer is the only person. I understand Michael Chabon. Michael Chabon wrote that beautiful article about his father and what Star Trek means to him, but Michael Chabon is not a fan. He might think he's a fan, but he's not an imagination, not like us. And I understand he's one of Hugo and Nebula. I've got his books right up there. I love them. The Adventures of Cavalier and Clay. Come on. That's a fantastic book. But let's face it, it's kind of a riff on Siegel and Schuster. I get where it all came from. But, being a fan who is also a movie producer, this doesn't exist. Kathleen Kennedy has been a movie producer since 1982 in E.T. But is she a creative producer? Is she a fan? Does she understand from the fan perspective? The same is true of Quibi. I've been saying Quibi, but Quibi. I don't think Meg Whitman and Jeffrey Katzenberg are watching YouTube shows. I don't think they are. And they're thinking about how these small bite-sized morsels that's what the kids want. No, the kids want TikTok. Their bite-sized morsels are not 4 to 10 minute narrative shows or even punked. It's just that world has changed. And I feel that Quibi is I hate to say it because I'm rapidly getting up there myself. I feel like I'm still in touch with my 12-year-old fanboy. I've also worked in the industry. I also kind of have that understanding of what's going on. But I watch these decisions that are being made, and I think watching what's happening at Disney Plus is kind of the same thing. Now, I'm sure the one thing that Disney Plus has going for it is every kid in the universe lives and grows up with Disney. So having Disney Plus, from one perspective, I'm like, every kid, every family in the world that can get Disney Plus will get it. You've got the entirety of Disney. It's the ultimate babysitter. So you're going to have that installed base. Kids, all the kids that are born now, assuming humanity is still here, in 50 years will probably still be watching Disney Plus. So Disney Plus was obviously a really good thing to do. However, the problem that Disney then has is it acquires Fox, the home of Alien, the Fox of Die Hard, the Fox of Predator, the Fox of even Deadpool. A lot of what made Fox movies and what made Fox a successful studio is their R-rated fare. So I understand the idea of getting a library, which is what really, let's face it, what Disney really wanted. It's not like Fox had theme parks and property holdings all over the world. What they wanted was that library so they could stream it. But Disney Plus is Disney Plus. I'm sure that at first people are like, oh my God, we can put everything on there. But you're not going to put Die Hard on there. You're not going to put Alien on Disney Plus. It's just never going to happen. But I think at the time, everybody was, we're going to acquire this, they did all their analytics and corporate, and then the reality set in, and corporately they're like, well, now what do we do? Kevin Feige's probably thinking about the Marvel characters. He already knows how he's going to incorporate the Fantastic Four and the X-Men into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. He knew it a long time ago. He knew about it when they acquired Spider-Man, because once they could acquire Spider-Man, all bets were off, and of course they were going to go for everyone else. Sure, why not? So they know. But they don't really, the fact that you announce a Lizzie McGuire reboot and think, oh, well, she's 30 now. So what are we going to do? Are we going to make it Caroline in the City? What are we going to do with that? And, of course, they've already pissed off creators on Disney Plus because it's Disney Plus. We all even know what it's supposed to be. If you want to put movies like they have, like The Sound of Music, that belongs on Disney Plus. But Disney Plus is a family channel. That's what it's going to be. You're not going to see other kinds of movies other than family fare. You would never see Star Trek Picard on Disney Plus. Never. They would never put... Isn't it crazy to me? It's crazy to me that a Star Trek show exists that wouldn't belong on Disney Plus. But it's true. Never go on Disney Plus. So, of course, they have Hulu, which is something else. Another streaming service and all that. But what I find strange about all of these things, like you get a guy like John Ridley. John Ridley is going to be producing a Tron series for Disney Plus. I'm sure immediately when he pitched his idea. When you're dealing with the virtual world or even virtual people like Tron Ascension coming into what do you think's going to happen? When you're dealing with virtual worlds, there are certain subject matter that's inherently built into that. You're dealing with the human mind that you're not going to want to deal with. And I'm sure John Ridley, who's written science fiction novels himself, probably pitched a great idea. Everyone's like, yeah, man, that's awesome. He went out and developed it. And then they're looking at it and think, oh, well, Tron is a Disney brand. It's actually a Disney movie. It was not Touchstone. It was not Hollywood Pictures. Tron was Disney. Back in 82, it's a Disney movie. You can't take your Disney franchise and turn it into something that it's not. Hell, they don't even want to admit that they made movies like Down and Out in Beverly Hills and Ruthless People. So I think it's a failure at the corporate level to come to grips with the reality of what's really going on. They say, one of my favorite sayings is that no battle plan ever survives contact with the enemy. I love that phrase. I love that idea. I think that corporate marketing strategies when it comes to the entertainment sphere, you can market all you want, but I think all the failures of marketing come because in the entertainment world, it's different. You can do all... let me hark back to Tron as a lesson. So when I was first tasked with making a Tron documentary back in 2001, 2002 was we had to have it out for the anniversary. This is how I remember it. Disney would do polling about their catalog titles, and they were polling women with children 5 and under. I've said this on the show before, but they polled women with children 5 and under, apparently, and they said, are you excited about these Disney titles? And one of the titles was Tron, and I hate to say it, and I don't mean to offend anyone, but in 2001, how many women with children 5 and under are necessarily Tron fans? Sure, they could have been in the sweet spot. They would have maybe known Tron if they went and saw it in 1982, but how many people actually did? How many people caught up with it? I know we imagination connoisseurs did, but your average mom... Now it's different. Now I think most people know Tron, but it's been almost 20 years. So there was no interest, according to this polling that Disney did. So I was told that they only wanted 10 or 15 minutes. That was what I'm like, 10 or 15 minutes. I was like, fuck that. I'm not going to give them 10 or 15 minutes. What I wanted to do was I wanted to make a living Cinefex article. We already had the box set, the Laserdisc box set that my boss, Michael Pellerin, produced. So I'm like, all right, dudes, what we're going to do is we're going to go make something that's dope. And I went back and I got Jeff Bridges in my Tron documentary. I got Bruce Boxleitner. I got Cindy Morgan. I didn't get David Warner. His agent wanted $75,000, which was like my entire budget. Like $75,000, I'm sure David Warner would have spoken to me if you'd actually called him up. But back in the day, everyone thought, hey, we're going to get lots of money. And then when people like Susan Sarandon and they got paid for Gina Davis got paid for Thelma and Louise, man, everyone's like, I'm going to get paid. And, rightfully so. But unfortunately, making special features documentaries, there was no money. There was no money to pay people. Sometimes there might have been, but usually there weren't. But what happened was Tron comes out. I don't make a 10 to 15 minute documentary. I made an 88-minute documentary. And because I wanted to make it interesting. It's a little academic because there's no behind the scenes footage. So there's very little. And I understand that. I get it. I understand. But the point is that I knew in 2002, if you had asked me, Rob, do you think we should put some resources behind Tron? Because we're not really, I would have said, yes. Yes, you should. Because you have an entire generation of people that have just gotten into DVDs. DVDs are huge. And the gaming culture that exists, you people have you're asking mothers with children 5 and under whether they're excited for Tron. Because that's what they would do. They would poll mother, are you excited about the new diamond release of Snow White? Yes, we are. Oh my God, my daughter and I can't wait to see it. You ask them about Tron, they're like, what? So of course the powers that be thought by using this marketing material that nobody was interested in Tron on DVD. Well, I could have told you, yes, you know why? Because I'm the damn consumer. I'm the guy that's going to run out and buy this disc because I want that beautiful new transfer of Tron. I was the guy working on the documentary, working on making the special features disc. And not to equate myself with Kevin Feige, but it's kind of the same thing. You have lifelong fans that have worked in the industry, that have grown up learning their craft, and they know more about the product than the very market, because the marketing people are generic marketing people. They might have, just like these Ivy League educated business grads get studio executive jobs. I get that. On paper, from the corporate standpoint, the corporate world, that looks smart. But in practice, is it? We've watched our audiences. The audiences, all of you imagination connoisseurs know we live in a world where the Umbrella Academy gets made, where The Boys gets made, where Dark Crystal Age of, I've got Hills Run Red on the brain. I wonder why that is. Dark Crystal Age of Resistance, that gets made and beautifully made. But these are not decisions that were going to ever be made on the corporate level. These are decisions that have to be made by people that know. Why we're getting so many cool things made now is because showrunners that know how to make television and movies, well, the best ones, get up and go, oh my God, I want to go make that. And they have the tools, they have the talent, they also have the fandom and the knowledge they need to go make this stuff and make it effectively. Unfortunately, we haven't seen any of those people take over at the corporate level like a Kevin Feige. When we say we want people like Kevin Feige, it means we want fans that are also professionals that can do both. And our franchises, certainly Doctor Who has not got that. I mean, if you're offered, here's the thing, if you're offered a job in Hollywood to make Star Wars, to make Star Trek, to make Doctor Who, whatever, you don't say, no. You always take the job. That's why people are where they're at. They take the job. But now we've got certain people in power that are getting into places and they're making things that they know. I mean, I love seeing what Seth Rogen has been doing. Seth Rogen, of course, got Preacher made, got The Boys made. You think that Seth Rogen was unaware of those properties before he got involved in them? No. I'm sure as he was, up there with a big old some Chronic, and he was had been reading Preacher for the 87th time. He'd probably read it. It's like, hey, yeah, man, we can get the rights to this, and he's done that. Preacher, The Boys. That's just one of the many things that he's done with Goldberg too, his partner, right? Evan Goldberg. I mean, this is smart stuff. This is what's happening, and I see that these mistakes at Disney Plus. I mean, I get it. They couldn't have made a Tron show because, the subject matter is, and they're wondering why, like, how could they have not known? How could they have not known that Disney Plus, they needed HBO knows when one of their water cooler shows is over, their new show starts up the next weekend. And it goes like that. Disney Plus at launch needed their first year of Mandalorians lined up. And why they didn't have them lined up, I could not tell you. I mean, I understand the Jeff Goldblum show and the other shows they've got, the not Cheer, but the performing arts one with Kristen Bell. I mean, all those shows are nice, but it's not like there's zeitgeist water cooler shows that have the audience that the Mandalorian. I mean, look at Baby Yoda, like I was talking about the other day. I got off a subway stop in Soho, I think. Well, it was close to Soho. I don't remember. And there was a Baby Yoda graffiti, beautiful graffiti, as I'm walking up the subway exit. And I'm like, that's where the Mandalorian was at. And why Disney Plus did not have at launch, they had the Mandalorian for what? We had 8 weeks. And then what? I mean, if you're going to launch a streaming service and you want to be competitive, you've got to have those shows lined up for a year. You need 52 weeks. Not just 8. If you're a fledgling streaming service, and you don't need to say to us, you don't need to tell us, I'll be there in a Quibi. That's not what people want. They want great content. And they want great content where they can sit in the privacy of their own home and concentrate on that great content, not when they're, say, walking down the streets of New York like this. You know, in New York, that's never very effective. But it just boggles my mind. It boggles my mind. And now, you know, Disney's wondering, I get it, with the coronavirus fears and everything, their stock, the parks are closed. I mean, that's huge revenue. I get it. It'll come back. It'll be fine, ultimately. But Disney Plus, what did they think was going to happen? What did their corporate, like, they jumped up, they got their 28 million subscribers on the backs of Baby Yoda, which is great, and helped out by Verizon. But where's Falcon and where's Loki? Where's Falcon and Winter Soldier? You know, where's WandaVision? Where's Moon Knight? I get it. They're all coming. They're in various stages of production. But they're going to have to weather that storm until whenever WandaVision debuts, because they don't have anything that and how did they not know that? And now they're wondering, you know, what is Disney Plus going to do? I mean, Netflix is dropping stuff. Hell, Love is Blind. Who would have thought that would have become a zeitgeist show? But it did. I mean, they know what's up, and I just find it interesting that we are seeing across the board how, with our franchises, whether it's Star Wars, Star Trek, or Doctor Who, and we're seeing things like at Disney Plus with launch, they feel like, okay, here we go. But if you're gonna have a successful streaming service, man, it's got to be year round. You got to be, why not look to HBO? Like, how do you not look at HBO and go, this is how you launch a show? You know, when Watchmen's on, we're starting The Outsider the next week. So if you love Watchmen, we've got another show for you. And HBO is just, they roll it out and they have a year-long schedule. They just keep rolling. The Plot Against America, Philip Roth, man. Come on, who doesn't want to watch that? I want to watch that. And how these other people don't know this, it's because there is a fundamental disconnect between these marketing people, these corporate executives, and us, the viewers, the imagination connoisseurs that you know, you pull in a focus group of your normal people, but you're servicing the imagination connoisseur audience has skyrocketed. We're the people that propel Endgame to being the most successful movie in the world. We were the people that should have shown up 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 times for Rise of Skywalker. But no, Disney corporate mandated certain things, and you know, why not listen to your audience? Now, I don't believe that all creative decisions should be left to the audience because, as evidenced by as many people, look, I think myself, I'm not always right, but I think I'm right about 75% of the time when it comes to knowing my entertainment, knowing what's going to be successful. And by the way, how do I know this? You can chart it if you go back and you look at the last 5 years of my appearances on YouTube. I've been wrong. I've been seldom wrong when I've said something is going to be successful. John and I, case in point, was Captain Marvel. John and I were going back and forth about Captain Marvel. I'm like, dude, it's going to be really successful. There's this underserved audience. You've got all these female imagination connoisseurs that are out there waiting. They're waiting. The pump was primed with Wonder Woman, and you're going to tell me that Captain Marvel isn't going to make $1 billion? I said it was going to make $1 billion. I think Black Widow could make $1 billion. But I'm not saying that from a fan perspective. I'm not saying that at the corporate level I can make those kinds of decisions because I have no pressure. But it's been really interesting to watch what's going on with Quibi that's positioning itself already as the cool. They're already telling you they're too cool for school with their dumb name Quibi. I'll see you in a Quibi. Like, no, let me punch you in the face. So whatever marketing person came up with that, hey, maybe it'll catch on. Maybe the kids will really like it. But I disagree because kids don't need to be told what's cool. They'll make things cool. And that's what you got to understand. You can't set out to make a cult movie. You just got to make a great movie. And if you make a great movie and it's weird and quirky, it'll develop its own cult. It'll develop its own status because that's how you get to be a cult thing. You can't tell somebody. You can't convince somebody, hey, watch this. Cult movies cannot be made. Cult movies have to happen. You can't tell me that I'm going to be there in a Quibi. Don't try and force your stupid name down my pop culture throat. It's got to develop. Maybe it will. Maybe the kids just can't wait to start throwing the word Quibi around. I think you've already made yourselves a laughing stock before you debut. But hey, I'm pulling for you. I want to see some good content. But you know what? I don't want to watch your content on my phone. I don't want to watch it on my tablet. I want to watch it on my 65-inch screen in the privacy of my bed with a glass of wine and my thunderous surround sound system blaring. That's how I want to watch your content. But you're designing your very expensive content to be watched on a phone. And I would ask you, why are you spending that much money? I know you're giving your star power all of this money when you don't need to. That's not why the kids are watching. The people that are the people that become stars on YouTube, nobody knew when they started watching them. That's part of the appeal is you watch these people grow with you. This audience, the people I'm talking to, you right now, you imagination connoisseurs. I didn't have you watching this show a year ago. You guys had to come to me. I had to convince you to stay. Every day I have to convince you to stay. If you don't like me, you unsubscribe. That means like me. Hit a like right now. I'll appreciate it if you do. But they just don't get it. And it's not like we're railing against individual things like, oh, Doctor Who is over. Or, oh, Star Trek Picard. Oh, Star Wars. It's all part of the same problem. It's the same thinking that tells you that I'll see you in a Quibi is cool. It's not cool. It's not cool. You know what's really cool? What's really cool is a guy like Kevin Feige who went out there and produced 13 Marvel movies and realized what worked and what didn't work. And all he ever wanted to do was go there and turn Marvel Studios and create the MCU, to create something that didn't exist before. Take what worked in the comics. Hey, what worked in the comics, the idea of a shared universe and characters that meet each other. What if you made movies like that? You know what? We would have all said, oh, that could be really cool if it's done well. But I bet in a corporate boardroom there's going to be like, wait, yeah, what? What? That's not on our marketing report. How do we know that's going to be cool? Kevin Feige knew. He knew. I'll be there in a Quibi. Never. Never, 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 never. Anyway, let's see where you guys are. What's happening? What's happening with you? First of all, I'm going to throw on my glasses for a moment because it's small and I can't see. And, I'm old, so maybe I shouldn't be talking to you Willow sends in a tip and says, I know you hated Sam Smith's song for Spectre, but what did you think of the opening title? I can't be the only one who thought of hentai when they had giant tentacles wrapping around naked women. Oh, Willow, I love where your mind goes. It's so great. You'd be so much fun to hang out with. Of course it's hentai. Yes. It's funny. Somebody, mentioned, I said The Wandering Kid, and then somebody else said Uratsuki Doji, The Legend of the Overfiend. They're the same thing, by the way, whoever said that. Yes, Willow. The hentai vibe was so strong. I mean, it's absolutely, it was the first thing I thought of, and why not go there? I think you're absolutely correct. That was my problem with Sam Smith's song. I don't, Skyfall was more the crooning song, but the writing's on the wall and Billie Eilish's song, it's not that they weren't well produced or well performed. It's like, I'm like, come on, man. When you're Bond, I want to strap myself into an Aston Martin, and I want to drive fast. I want to fire guns. I want to drink great champagne, eat good caviar, and make love to beautiful women. And travel the world and take out the bad guys. I mean, these songs are... a James Bond theme song should make you as a viewer want to do that. And, but Daniel Kleinman, who designs the opening Bond titles, he took over from Maurice Binder, who made those great opening Bond titles from the very beginning. Daniel Kleinman started with GoldenEye. Man, those GoldenEye credits, woo, were those cool. And all of them have been, because his Casino Royale credits are amazing. He was replaced on Quantum of Solace by, I think, Mark Forrester's people. I think it was a German company that did it. If you want to do an interesting experiment, just go to YouTube. Not right now. Well, you're on YouTube already, so you're here. But anyway, after the show's over, go watch Daniel Kleinman's opening Bond titles. So GoldenEye, Tomorrow Never Dies, The World Is Not Enough, even Die Another Day. Although Die Another Day is kind of lackluster, but Die Another Day and Casino Royale 5. And then go watch the opening credits to Quantum of Solace. It's a disappointment. And then you go back to Skyfall and Spectre. And Kleinman's opening titles, they're so good. They're so good. And I think he probably did them for No Time to Die. I would imagine. But yeah, you're not wrong, Willow. Hentai all the way. Chairman Mao sends in a tip and says, Rob, the General of Ghibli. I am the General of Ghibli. Ghibli is our nonsensical word we came up with. Actually, John Campea came up with, and it just means you're all just Ghibli for whatever it is that's coming out that you're Ghibli for. I want to be the General of Ghibli. My son and I went to see Sonic this weekend, and they played the trailer to I Still Believe. I suspected it was faith-based. Once I saw the sick girl and Gary Sinise, I knew for sure. Guess that's the only work he is getting now. Well, I don't know. I mean, I think Gary Sinise has gone into charity work. I think maybe I know he does a lot of great work with veterans and for veterans causes. I mean, I don't know if that's necessarily all the work he could get, but maybe he liked the script. I mean, sure, he's getting paid, but yeah, those faith-based movies. I worked on one. I actually worked on a faith-based movie. I was the assistant editor on a movie called Like Dandelion Dust that stars Barry Pepper and Mira Sorvino. And I really like working on it. It was based on a faith-based novel, but I thought the film turned out really well. It was about an interesting adoption conundrum, so I did enjoy it, and I would recommend checking it out if you haven't, just because I think it's pretty good. In addition, regarding the faith industry, I'm guessing The Boys isn't their favorite show after they took the piss out of them in a major way. Yeah, yes. But I don't, we were talking about faith-based movies today, and I don't necessarily think that a faith-based movie has to be bad. I think that really it's the talent that you're actually able to get to work on faith-based movies. And again, the problem with, I think, a faith-based movie is their agenda, espousing their beliefs, or putting something rather than you have to start with your characters and your story. And if you want to tell an inherently Christian tale, or that's usually what faith-based means, make that come out in the story that you're telling. You know, that's what I would suggest. That's where I'm coming from. Tiberius Monk 84 sends in a super chat and says, "Rob is worthy of wielding Thor's hammer, Mjolnir." Well, thank you for that. I don't know. Royce Freeman asks, he sends in a super chat and he says, "Thoughts on Corey Feldman's documentary, My Truth, The Rape of Two Coreys?" Well, for those of you who have not been keeping up with current events, last night, Corey Feldman's documentary, The Rape of Two Coreys, has debuted. They had a lot of problems with the streaming portion of it, but it showed at the DGA. And in that movie, he names names. He names who he says it is a name that's been floating out there in other forms. I don't want to get into that. I'm not going to say anything about who that is. You can find out with a cursory glance, especially today. But yes, Corey Feldman's trying to blow the lid off the exploitation of children, which I find admirable. My friend Brian Herzlinger directed the film, so I wish them the best with it. And I think it's an important subject, and I think it absolutely should be tackled. But again, I haven't seen the movie, and it's not. It's a subject I'd like to sort of stay away from, not because I'm afraid of the subject matter. It's just not. It gets into a lot of sordid stuff that sort of takes me away from my mission statement. Anyway, Evan Newman says, "Congrats on the Blu-ray release of The Hills Run Red. Could you discuss how this came about and what goes into prepping a movie for a re-release like this? E.g., is the negative rescanned? Was it hard getting a licensing agreement with Warner Brothers, etc.?" Well, I can speak to that. I don't work for Shout Factory directly. I am currently working for them as a freelancer, creating material for the Blu-ray. I will say this, on the first for the special features, people have asked, on the first Blu-ray, I worked working on, we did a commentary. Dave Scow, Dave Parker, and myself recorded a commentary. I would assume that they're going to be using that again. And I also made a 30-minute documentary called It's Not Real Until You Shoot It, Making the Hills Run Red. And that was finished on HD-Cam SR. And I would assume that's going to be on the disc as well. So there was on the original DVD, there was a commentary that I participated in, and there was a 30-minute making of. I had taken my camera to Bulgaria because they weren't going to give us a DVD crew, so I shot stuff, and the that documentary that's on the disc is, I hope it's on the new disc because I did finish it in HD. It was only ever in standard definition. It'd be nice to see it in HD. But when it comes to that, the film was already finished in high definition. So there was a high definition master. A lot of the time, the way you should do it for real, The Hills Run Red was shot on 35 millimeter film. It was shot on film, and it was then scanned they scanned the negative, and it was finished digitally. So, and there was a lot of post-digital effects on it. So it was finished in high definition. So I wouldn't imagine, I was not involved with any rescanning. On most films, if you're going to put, I'll give you an example. Free Enterprise, for instance, which I've priced out. If you have a movie like Free Enterprise, in order to do a 4K transfer, and I'm trying to raise the money to do just that, it costs about $100,000 to do all of that scanning. So even to get the movie just in 4K, and there's a lot of other work, color timing, but just to scan the negative, to clean it, to scan it for restoring purposes, it's about $100,000. That's how it would normally be done. A company like Scream Factory or Shout Factory could not afford to do that. So usually what they're doing is sometimes they're overseeing that, but they usually, if there's masters they can acquire. I have not asked Cliff McMillan, but I would assume that the original version of Hills Run Red that exists, they used that version because it was in fact finished in HD. I don't know if they did any work on it. They might have, but I would imagine probably not, but they might have done some work. I'm not sure. But yes, so then Shout Factory goes after films. We thought 6 months ago that it wasn't going to happen, but they have. The interesting thing about The Hills Run Red is, while you could get it on Vudu, it really hasn't ever appeared on cable. And there was no Blu-ray release. It is the only Dark Castle. Dark Castle is Joel Silver's genre label, and it's the only Dark Castle movie that hasn't ever been released on Blu-ray, to my knowledge. And it's very frustrating. We couldn't get it out there, and I think that when we made The Hills Run Red, there was a little bit of controversy after we showed the first version of the movie, because there were a couple scenes in it that were really, let's just say, they went beyond the pale. They were really, 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 really extreme. And I think that if you were, say, a 15-year-old girl who bought the movie at Walmart, and if these scenes remained in the film and you took it home and watched it, it was really extreme. And I think cooler heads prevailed and made us take out those sequences. Now, they're not going to appear back in the movie, and I don't think that they should, because they would make the movie incongruous. I mean, it wouldn't work, I think, as well as it does now, because it's too much. It was really pushing a Serbian film territory at some points. I mean, there was one scene I'll say that caused the on-set medic to leave the set, bail. Now, watching it was a hoot, watching it getting filmed. I mean, when you're making horror movies, it's hilarious because everyone's laughing at all the blood and the guts and everything. But when you watch I will say that the making of a horror movie is diametrically opposed to what it's like to watch a horror movie. Making a horror movie is just a lot of fun. Watching horror movies shouldn't be. I mean, it can be fun, but especially really horrific movies like this that deal with some really lurid subject matter. But so for re-release like this, I know that for various reasons, director Dave Parker and I are separately working on special features. And I have created about 2 hours of material. I don't know how much Dave has created. I haven't talked to him about that yet. At some point we have to hook up before the final special features are due later in the month. But all of the special features that I have created for this release have never been seen before. It's all footage Dave was going back and doing new interviews with people today. I was going back into all my footage and creating new special features of the actual shooting of the movie. So you'll see that there's a lot of those pieces, and it was great because, I've been carrying around this footage for 12 years and it never saw the light of day. I was like, well, what am I going to do with this? But I was hanging on to this in the hopes that we'd get an HD release someday. So all of the special features that I have finished is all never before seen footage that was created during the making of the film. And I've mixed all of the pieces. And I don't know if they'll do this, but all of the special features that I've made are mixed in 5.1 surround. So that's pretty cool. I mean, it's just a little thing. But anyway, so Shout would have to license the film and then put it out. All of my special features have to be approved, interestingly, by Warner Brothers. So they're going to Warner Brothers. I had to make Vimeo links for all that stuff, and then they look at them and tell me if I have to cut anything out, if anything is objectionable. I don't think it is, but maybe some of the behind-the-scenes footage might be. Who knows? But I'm happy that you're happy about it. It's been a long time coming. I can't wait to replace behind me here in the Robservatory the DVD of The Hills Run Red with. I mean, The Hills Run Red, as many people know, it's the first movie that I produced. Pretty much. I mean, there were other producers that joined us, but when it started out, I was really the lead producer on it, and it was supposed to be a $350,000 movie, and then we flipped it and turned it into a studio movie. So for me as a producer, it was an epic win. I mean, we debuted it at the Seattle International Film Festival. We took it to Sigis. Dave Parker got to share a limo ride with Herschel Gordon Lewis going to our premiere screening at Sigis. I mean, the whole experience, making the film, it took a long time to make, but once it was made and it came out, it was an epic win for me as a producer. We got a big spread in Fangoria magazine. It was really cool, and I'm sorry that Dark Castle sort of scuttled their program. They were going to make 10 movies, 10 low-budget movies like Hills Run Red and Return to House on Haunted Hill, which was the first. Ours was the second, and it was just, for me, it was a delightful experience. And I it's funny going back and watching all the footage. I'd forgotten. I'm like, wow, I don't remember shooting all this stuff, and there's a lot of stuff, and I'm going to use it all. I've milked it all, ladies and gentlemen. I've milked it all. And I'll tell you something else. I shot that stuff on HDV, the HDV format, which is dead. It's a tape format. I was very impressed. I went and rented a professional deck and transferred all the footage, digitized all the footage. Man, it looks good. I didn't realize how good it could look. It makes me want to go and jump in and retransfer all of my Superman Returns stuff, because that was another documentary I made that was not done in HD, but it was shot in HD. Maybe I'll do that. Chairman Mao sends in a tip and says, General Ghibli. General Ghibli. I think the same fate will befall Quibi as it did Snapchat. Does anyone use Snapchat anymore? I think IG stories killed that. Instagram stories. I never hear anyone talking about it now or saying to go check out their Snapchat. Yeah, I know. I mean, look, Quibi might be good. I keep saying Quibi, but it's Quibi. It might be good if the programming's great. If the programming's great, people are going to go. I think that Meg Whitman and Jeffrey Katzenberg, they don't strike me as two people that have their pulse on the youth of America or the youth of the world. Maybe their marketing departments do, or maybe their marketing departments think they do. Yeah. Mark C. sent in a super chat. Thanks, Mark C. Anyone notice Disney Star Wars has no amputations? Disney Plus needs to build a section where grown-ups can play. Maybe then we can get the Fox and Hollywood picture films. Yeah, I don't understand that. And Touchstone. Where are those movies, man? It's so weird to me. Very weird. Mark C. continues, with the technology developed for Jungle Book and used for Mandalorian, doing a Tron series would be cheaper than ever. I know. You know, it's funny. I've thought about that. If you look at how the original Tron was made, how they shot it in 65 millimeter and then blew up each frame and then painted them. Oh, my God. And now what you could do, a Tron series would be dope using that stagecraft technology. I would love to see that. That's a great idea. Mark C says, Quibi seems too corporate. I and many go to YouTube to get away from corporate interests and to see what real people can do. Mark, you just nailed it. I mean, you absolutely nailed it. That's exactly, when you're talking on YouTube, you're usually watching people, like I would love to hang out with Joe Rogan for hours. We could talk about so many different things. We're interested in a lot of the same stuff. Dave Rubin is another guy on the other side. I mean, he's conservative, whatever. I'm like, still like watching him and his guests. You know, I watch a lot of people. I'll watch, like I say, my man Gem Mint. I don't even know Gem Mint. I like his channel. I consider myself, I walk around and I think, Gem Mint has a new video up. I'm a Geminite. The same way you are imagination connoisseurs, I am a proud Geminite. And like, you know, while I watch Fandom Menace channels, I watch Gary Beekler, I want to get nerdrotic. That's what I want to do in my own mind. I mean, Gary's got a new video out for 10 minutes. I'm going to get nerdrotic with him for 10 minutes. You know, Midnight's Edge, especially I became a fan of the narration, Rob and Andre, and the narration that's done. And I was a fan of Midnight Edge way before I was on YouTube myself, and I would watch their stuff. And I've never met Andre. I've talked to him, obviously, but I just like listening to Andre talk. I like his Norwegian accent. You know, he's like a guy, I've never met him. I don't even know what he looks like. If I was standing in the same room with him, I've been on shows with him, I listen to him, I would never know who he is, but I'm sure we'd have a great time. He's been very generous to me and very nice. But, you know, I like that. I think you're exactly right, Mark C. You watch. And look, you know what? I watched a video, Jeremy, Geeks and Gamers, I watched a video today about the Million Women Strong, Million Mothers Strong. I was interested to see what he had to say about that. Like, I jump around in the fan circles all the time. I watch anytime Chris Stuckman has a review that pops up, I watch Chris Stuckman. I like Chris Stuckman. Never met him, I don't think. But I like Chris Stuckman. I like watching his videos. And I'm not ashamed to say, hey, I tune in. Producer Michael. I don't know if you guys know Producer Michael. He's a guy that just reviews, he goes into huge Beverly Hills mansions and shows $18 million diamonds. And then there's Manny Coban. He owns a bunch of supercars in Orange County. He's like a billionaire, self-made billionaire. I watch his channel. And I watch these channels, just like you said, Mark, because it's not corporate, because it's dudes or dudettes or, you know, whoever you are. That's exactly why you watch YouTube. And I'm like, Quibi, this idea that they're going to spend, do I want to watch Do I want to watch a YouTube show that cost $7.5 million to make? You know, like a major show as I'm walking on the street. It's such a weird thing. I think it's like you said, Mark C. I think that if you were hired by Quibi and you said, they'd probably, what do you know? Let's consult our marketing department. JB Bonifacio sends in a super chat and says, assuming Iger is using his remaining time to right the ship with Disney Plus, what could he be doing other than to crack the whip and say faster, faster? JB, I don't think a lot. I don't think there's a lot for him to do. I think it was a mistake. Look, I think the conventional wisdom was that all families, everybody's going to want to have Disney Plus, And I think they did a good job of getting people, like Jeff Goldblum's show and Kristen Bell's show. People love that show, but then they're over, and you watch them, and it's like, well, what next? I mean, the Lady and the Tramp remake, the live-action remake, was not exactly scintillating, even though I did watch it. You gotta feed the beast. Netflix feeds the beast. Netflix is getting shit from all over the world and dropping it, and it's they know what's up. Whether they're gonna survive the streaming wars, I don't know, but they've. I gotta tell you, let's give it up for Netflix because they now have number 10 in the United States. They've got this suddenly, like it just appeared without fanfare, but they've got what's hot, and I have to say that I tune into Netflix just to see like what's trending. Oh my God, Love Is Blind is number 2. By the way, I would be remiss if I did not give a shout out to the producers, the cast and the crew, and to NBC for Manifest. All I can say, Detective Jim, you know what I'm talking about. Let's give him a little golf clap. Yay. Man, can I just say, Manifest is just the gift that keeps on giving. Oh my God. Wow. I talked about the impossible premise. Give it up. I don't know. They must, I swear to God. You know what? I always rip on Picard every week, but I have to just say, on the flip side, you got to give it up for the writers' room. I just give it up for, they're getting away with it. You got to get paid, G. You guys are getting paid. Good for you. I will keep tuning in. 13 episodes this season. Oh, yes. What do we have to do to get you picked up for season 3? By the way, this is not a tacit approval of what you're doing by any stretch of the imagination. But as Maximus Decimus Meridius asked, am I not entertained? Oh, yes. Oh, yes, I am entertained. Manifest is like the Star Crash of NBC network television. God love you for it, and that's the highest compliment I can pay you. Oh, I love you. So JB, faster. Where was I talking about cracking the whip? No one said, by the way, whip better than than Leonard Nimoy said whip on the Star Trek episode Space Seed. It's so great. Although Seth MacFarlane comes close when he says whip. Yeah. Anyway, totally. Let's see. Mark C says that Gary Sinise is a known conservative. In the world of Orange Man Bad, Gary has been blacklisted. Oh, is that true? See, I don't understand. Here's where my disconnect comes from, I guess. I love Gary Sinise as a screen presence. I mean, I loved him as Lieutenant Dan. I loved him in The Stand. I love Gary Sinise. I loved him on CSI New York. And whatever his politics are, why deprive yourself of that kind of screen presence? I mean, look, there are known conservatives in Hollywood like James Woods who also want to date really, really young girls. That can get weird and creepy, and I understand that. But, when you hire Gary Sinise, I don't think he's going to be wearing I don't understand. I mean, I do understand, but I mean, I'm sure if you're not going to talk politics, unless he is a raging, would I have to listen to his MAGA lectures every day? I don't know. But, you know, at least he puts his money where his mouth is, at least in terms of what he's done for the troops. And there's a great video when the people thank him for all the work he's done for them. Watch that video. There's another YouTube video. You can't get a corporate mindset to pay for that kind of video. That Gary Sinise video, it'll hit you right in the feels. Check it out. I think it's called like Gary Sinise is thanked by whomever. Just write Gary Sinise thanked. Put it on YouTube. Check it out. You know, people have. I don't understand. Like, what do you want to do? Stamp out conservative values? I think that there's nothing wrong with being a conservative. I think that what's wrong is when you want to impose your conservative viewpoints on everyone else. Because usually here's my thing. I don't necessarily think conservative beliefs are bad inherently. As a matter of fact, I think a lot of the time fiscal conservativeness, conservancy? It can be great. What I don't like is a lot of the time conservative values come along with other kinds of values that I don't necessarily think are good. And that's the problem when you're conflating a bunch of different belief systems under the umbrella of conservatives, and then that becomes sort of bad. I mean, here's the thing. There are people that exist in the world. They exist. You're not going to convert them. You're not going to change them. You're not going to ask them to go against their nature and ever going to succeed. They are here naturally. And if it has anything to do with their sexuality or their gender or their skin color, these are people that belong here. That's why they're here. They're supposed to be here. They belong here. And to try and marginalize those people or try and tell them that they can't love or they can't do whatever, who are you to do that? They're here just as much as you're here. And that's where I start having a problem. When you try and tell people the way they should, as long as their lives are not infringing on your life. You know what? They're very, it used to, I lived with a girl platonically, my friend Krista. I was her housemate for a long time, and we lived on a street. And the front window, you could see out the window. We lived on a really nice street, everyone's houses, and I would wave to our neighbors. And it always struck me. It was something that never struck me until I lived at this house, because maybe it was the way it sat on when I would walk out the front door and get in my car and on the front driveway. I would often think to myself. And the reason I thought this, well, I'll tell you why I thought this in a minute. I would often think to myself that we live on this nice street with pretty nice neighbors, and what is going on, what they do in the privacy of their own homes is none of my business. But more importantly, it doesn't matter to me. It shouldn't matter to me. Now, the only time it ever did matter to me is, I'll tell you a funny story. For those of you, I have new subscribers, so you haven't heard it. In this same neighborhood, I got this a third-party figure of Carl Urban as Judge Dredd. I have two Judge Dredd third-party figures. I have Sylvester Stallone, which is a dope figure, and I have Carl Urban. So I got 12-inch figures of both of those Judge Dredds. And I love the Carl. When I got the Carl Urban figure, I was so taken with it. I'm like, ooh, I want to take an epic picture of Judge Dredd guarding my neighborhood. I don't know why. So I take this figure out, and I'm using my iPhone, right, to get the perfect frame. And I stand the figure up like on the sidewalk, and I'm trying to make him look, get the correct angle. And I end up sitting on my stomach. I'm completely laid out flat on the street corner getting these pictures. What I did not know is that across the street, my 8-year-old neighbor is watching all of this and calls her mother at work. And her mother calls my housemate, who is also at work, and my housemate calls me and says, "What's going on?" I'm like, "What?" She goes, "Are you sitting outside the house playing with an action figure?" By the way, this is just a couple of years ago, and I said, "Well, I didn't know." I was like, "How did you know that? Like, do you have a drone? Are you spying on me during the day? Is there some camera I don't know?" And she goes, "No, the 8-year-old neighbor called her mother concerned, saying that there's a strange man on the street lying down." It was very embarrassing. I think the picture's on my Instagram feed, though. So check it out. But anyway, At least I put my money where my mouth is. You know, I really am that guy. So there you go, Mark. Crosstalk sends in a tip. Hey, Crosstalk, how you doing? We were talking about Arthurian legend in the chat. Other than Excalibur, what Arthurian legend story would you like to see, in what style and format? You know, I am not really up on my Arthurian legends, but I would like to see. You know, in Excalibur, there's the whole. Is it Parsifal who goes to seek to find the Grail? I would love to see that story expanded. I've always thought that was really interesting. What is the secret of the Grail? Whom does it serve? I always thought, I love Excalibur. I mean, Robin and Mary, and there's been so many different Arthurian adaptations. But the story of seeking out the Holy Grail, seeking out the Holy Grail, the Grail quest. I always love that. I would love to see a movie. There's probably already been one that I'm unaware of, but I'm sure. Mark C asks, when can you talk about your work? Oh wait, no, that's a crosstalk. Joseph the Ghibli Quibi. I love you guys. This is the best. So yes, I would like to see a full-blown Grail quest movie, which I think would be interesting. And somebody should do Camelot 3000. Yeah. But I'm a huge fan of Excalibur. I love Excalibur. It just gets better every time I see it. Joseph the Ghibli Quibi says, "Oh, hi, Rob. Indiana Jones called. He wants his jacket back." Oh, man, this is not Indiana Jones' jacket. By the way, if you were to write the next Trek show, what would be its setting? The ship, time setting, overall theme, etc. Well, it's funny that you guys say that. For those of you who might not know, it was back when we were working on Superman Returns. It was in 2005, maybe 2006, early 2006. I was sitting with Bryan Singer and Chris McQuarrie. We were having dinner at a sushi restaurant in Madison Park. Chris McQuarrie lived right down the street from my grandfather in Seattle. So we were all having sushi, and Enterprise had ended, and I was talking to them, and we were drinking copious amounts of sake, and I said, "Hey man, we should all do a Star Trek show together." Chris would write it, Brian would direct it, and I'd be the creative consultant. Who would say no to that package? And I was planning on planning on going to Paramount. Brian's like, "Yeah, I'll do it. I'm in." So I had thrown out some ideas, and my idea was basically to set my Star Trek series 1,000 years in the future. Huh? Yeah, 1,000 years in the future. But it wasn't, and everything in the Federation was different. It wasn't a dystopia. It was just different. The Vulcans and the Romulans had reunified, and they sort of had pulled away from the Federation. The Bajorans were communing with the wormhole aliens. The Cardassians had become more artists. The Klingons had undergone a massive reformation, so they were more like warrior monks and mystics, but they were still pushing the boundaries outward of their empire. So everything was different. But the Federation was old. It wasn't dystopian. It was just old. The age of exploration had ended, and everybody was just kind of, starships were not being built. We couldn't traverse the space to the next galaxy. So it was malaise. It was the galaxy had become complacent. Our infrastructure and people just, they weren't that interested anymore. They weren't that interested in what was happening, and the Federation was sort of crumbling from within, not because of xenophobia or anything else. I mean, they still kept their ideals, but it was more like, okay, the galaxy's sort of calmed down and everyone's doing their thing and everything is sort of different, but Earth is now mostly the Federation, and an outside force would come into, kind of like the Yuzon Vong, or I wasn't using the Yuzon Vong as a model. But so what I did was, at the time I was self-publishing comics, and I was working on a comic with Jeffrey Thorne, who's a great writer. Jeffrey Thorne has written a number of Star Trek novels. He's also a TV writer. And I basically was throwing out these vague ideas about where I thought that the universe would go. And Jeff Thorne wrote the treatment up. Wrote the treatment, and then I got the treatment, then I wrote an introduction to the treatment, and then I asked Mike Akuda, to send me some ideas they had that were never used on Star Trek. Like, what could we incorporate into the design of the ships, for instance? And then he made a logo, and the show was called Star Trek Federation, and it would have taken place around the year 3000. And basically, what it was all about doing, the basic premise, my overarching idea for the show, for the Star Trek show, what I wanted to do was show how do you get people reinvigorated and re-energized to follow their dreams, to make life worth living. How do you bring back, if people are tired, they're bored, they're broken down, how do you re-engage people with the wonders of the universe? And the idea, the premise behind that would be that we need to re-inject, we need to bring the Federation back to its luster, not because it's fallen into, it's xenophobic, or it's, they're murdering synths or outlawing. No, it just was a function of, once everybody's fat and happy, how do you keep your life interesting? And that was my overarching theme. So that's what I wanted to see done. And this great threat was going to be what re-energized, it was going to re-energize the galaxy. And that's kind of what I wanted to see. And it was going to be a metaphor for people as we grow older. It was a metaphor for America itself. It was a metaphor for Star Trek as a franchise. How do you reinvigorate the franchise? And ultimately, it was almost like, I was kind of thinking about the like on Golden Pond, like the Federation would have just been old, in a way, kind of waiting to die. And how do you stop that from happening? And it went from there. Now it's called Star Trek Federation. You can probably find it online. I mean, it's online. I've given interviews about it. But what happened was, after Jeff Thorne finished the treatment, that he wrote this treatment, and I added these things to it, and I gave it to Brian and Chris. And soon after, I think probably I hadn't even looked at it at the time, Bad Robot announced that they'd taken over the Star Trek franchise. So we never actually pitched it. And, a lot of people are like, oh, you're just bitter because of Axner, this and that. I'm like, it was a Hail Mary. It was something that I never actually thought. I mean, it would have been something. It was fun. It was a great drunken exercise that actually elicited a response. I had the document to show for it. You can read it. I mean, it wasn't perfect. The document was designed really as a jumping off point. I was hoping that Brian and Chris would come back and we would develop it and add all this stuff to it. But it was just, I thought Jeff Thorne did an outstanding job doing it. And it was great. But then, Ludovico had Disney pulled the plug on Chronicles of Narnia. A lot of things happened after Superman Returns. And I ended up doing Hills Run Red, and sort of my operation had to downsize, which was too bad, because I think it could have been great. Mark C says, when can you talk about your work for Netflix? Well, it's funny. I did some work for it yesterday. I'm doing some small work. I can't talk about what it is, but I've been doing some small editorial contributions to an upcoming Netflix series that I believe drops fourth quarter of 2020. And when I get further along, when the show gets further along, I will say it's looking pretty tasty. It's looking pretty cool. It's pretty cool. It's out of my wheelhouse. I've never worked. Actually, it's really cool. And there's a lot of, it's for an imagination connoisseur like all of you out there, you're going to enjoy, I will say this, you're going to enjoy the cast very much. That's all I can say. Sean M. sends in a super chat. Thanks, man. Quattro triticale, a four-lobed hybrid of wheat and rye. Yes, the wheat that they're taking to Sherman's planet. That's in K7 space station. That all gets devoured by the Tribbles. The Tribbles die and find out that it's poisoned. Oops. Oh, I see what you're doing. Make that Quattro quibicale. Quibicale. Why has everyone heard of this except me? Well, I'll tell you something. Quibi, the fact that people haven't heard of it is indicative of their problem. Sam O'Neill sent in a super chat and says, "Have you seen Altered Carbon? I want to give it a try, but I'm not sure. I've seen the first season of Altered Carbon. I liked it. I didn't love it. Elizabeth, it was so funny. Elizabeth was watching it last night, and she had never seen it before. I liked Altered Carbon. I read the original book. I liked it. It was okay. You know, it was pretty derivative of other things, but I thought it was pretty good. I've not seen season 2 yet, and I do want to see it. Oh, Sam O'Neill also said, I watched Spencer Confidential with Marky Mark and Winston Duke. Netflix, heard meh things, but I really enjoyed it. Well, it is Peter Berg, you know. Sure, Peter Berg has been hit and miss. Peter Berg of Late for Dinner, somebody asked me about. Now he's become quite the accomplished director. I'm a fan of Peter Berg, to be honest. Even when I don't like his movies so much, I still find them entertaining and very watchable. So I'm totally going to watch it. I think it's great that they've done it. I think they went back to the books, didn't they? I don't know. Stubble McShave sends in a tip and says, speaking of Tron, I'm surprised that Bruce Boxleitner didn't have a bigger career. By the way, you missed one of my tips earlier. Oh, did I? I'm sorry. Well, let me go back, first of all, Stubble, and get that. I apologize. Oh, let me start here. I'm sorry. Hi, Rob. Your mention of the comic book situation reminds me of how they treated fantasy literature in the mid to late 90s. Jordan and Martin were selling books in the millions, and publishers threw money on new authors who all flopped. It almost killed the genre. Well, dude, I've seen this time and time again. When it comes to the imagination connoisseur space, science fiction, fantasy, and horror, you've got the money people. They just have a complete disconnect with, what are the kids like today? I mean, somebody just decides that, the fantasy genre is hot. You know, Wheel of Time and Game of Thrones making some money. So let's just, everybody with we'll all make money. And it's so weird to me. It's so weird to me. Because the imagination connoisseur audience, of which we all are, is the most discerning of audiences. Sure, there's a lot of us. There's a lot of Star Trek fans, I know, that'll watch any Star Trek. I'm one of them. But I don't have to like them, but I'll still watch them. But everything else, you got to earn. Look at what happened in the wake of Harry Potter's enormous success. The entire YA genre. I never heard the term YA. Maybe it predates me. I don't know. I mean, to me, I was reading Judy Blume books in the 4th grade before I was probably supposed to. I read Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. Yes, I did, and I'm not ashamed. I read Then Again, Maybe I Won't. And of course, by the 6th grade, it got really interesting with Forever. All right, that book was being passed around by all the girls, and I'm like, all right, if I had known Vesna and Paula and Willow, I'm telling you, we would have been reading Forever out loud to each other and giggling. Then it might have led to something more fun. Who knows? But yes, that was YA, but it wasn't called YA. You know what my YA fiction was? The Stand, The Shining, and Salem's Lot, and Graham Masterton books, and James Herbert's The Fog, or The Dark, or The Survivor, or Spear, anything like that. YA books, all of a sudden everybody and their brother and sister and aunt and uncle and whomever was writing YA books, and how many of them have reached Harry Potter-like proportions? I mean, Maze Runner, Hunger Games, Harry Potter. Yeah, it's problematic. I mean, the funny thing is, you can't, I say that too much, you can't go, okay, I'm going to create any book in the YA genre and it's going to sell. No, everything should be looked at on an individual basis. You can't just decide, well, that fantasy, he's so hot right now, and then just throw money at fantasy books. That doesn't work. It's so lame. But yeah, I mean, and it kills everything. It kills everything. But Stubble, back to your other question, that Bruce Boxleitner didn't have a bigger career. Well, I think, he never, it was so great to see him in Tron Legacy, to see him back on the screen. First of all, Bruce Boxleitner is one of the nicest guys, one of the nicest celebrities I interviewed. Really, the nicest guy in the world. And by the way, so is Jeff Bridges. One of the just nicest, all of them, nicest people in the world. But yeah, I'm surprised. He was mostly a TV actor, I guess. And then, you know, when you're on TV for as long as he's been, you've made some decent money and you put it away. And I mean, if you can enjoy your life and you don't have to worry about money, it'd be great. Who knows? Mark C says, I won't buy Disney Plus till I can watch all of Guy Williams' Zorro and Dr. Sin, a.k.a. The Scarecrow with Patrick McGoohan. Dude, I love The Scarecrow. Yeah, there's a lot of... I have a friend who's actually working on Disney Plus right now, and I've told him about that, and I want him to get that on there. I think it'll eventually be on there. I mean, they've got to transfer all this stuff to HD and make it capable, and it's expensive. It's expensive. Sam O'Neill sends in another super chat. Mamma Mia was number 2 on Netflix in Australia the other day. All I was thinking of is, what the F? Well, that's the fun thing about Netflix's new thing. And I got to tell you, why didn't they do this all? Because what's interesting is what Netflix has done, at least for me, is it's now made something that I will turn on and I'll go on to Netflix. I won't even watch anything. I'll just look and see what the numbers are. And it's fascinating to see because I hope it's real time. You know, I don't know what the analytics are. I don't know if they would do that. But just to see, like, they put up a new movie, a random movie like, well, Mamma Mia, for whatever reason. Because, you know, if there's, like, a big news story or something, you can probably correlate. And this is my new thing is cross-platform data or whatever. Like, whatever's going on in the world, does that correlate? I mean, that's why we need deep learning AI. We need artificial intelligence to think like this, because if you figure out if there was a mention in the news or something that had maybe Mamma Mia or somebody dancing queen showed up that somebody mentioned it, I don't know, on a game show, but then suddenly everyone's like, oh, ABBA, oh, Mamma Mia, I want to watch that again, and they go and I wonder if it's on Netflix, and then it winds up in Australia as number. Correlate, find out, was there a mention in the press of Mamma Mia or ABBA when that was number 1? Maybe that's what happened. I mean, I love stuff like that. Dieter Bastian sends in a super chat and says, hey, Rob, I've seen The Hills Run Red is getting a Blu-ray release in May of 2020 from Shout Factory. Any news on your end? Are you involved? Yes. As I've said, I've created a little over so far 2 hours of special features, of never before seen special features. I'm trying to not duplicate anything that was seen on the first release. That is including the interviews. I didn't realize how many interviews were done, actually. I'd forgotten. So yeah, about 2 hours. And Dave Parker, the director, is also working on... I've gone back into all the footage that we shot during production of the film. And then Dave is creating new material and new interviews with people. I would assume like Freddie Weidman, our composer. By the way, one of the great things about Freddie Weidman, man, you got to give it up for that guy. Our composer, it's not just because he did our music. I didn't know Freddie before he did the Hills Run Red score, but Varese Sarabande released his score on CD. I was very proud of that, by the way. And I have his entire score, not just what was on the album, but I have his entire score that I've been using for the documentary pieces. And man, what a score he wrote. He's very, very talented. So yeah, you're gonna see a lot of stuff. It's going to be a packed release. I wish they would make it a collector's release so we'd get one of those newly painted covers, but it just doesn't have the reputation for it. I'm hoping that maybe they'll change their minds when they see how much special footage, special features we've made for the disc. Quibi Quibbles is here. Quibi Quibbles sends in a tip and says, by the way, hey, Dieter, what's up, man? I know I haven't gotten... You sent me a box, and Mike Bodden hasn't sent it to me, but I'm going to see him, and I'll get it. And I'm going to watch Big Bang Boom. I'm going to get to it. Quibi Quibbles says, hi, Rob, long-time lurker, first-time tipper, rewatching TNG and just finished the 2-parter Descent with Lore leading the disconnected Borg. Whatever happened to Lore after he was deactivated? No one knows. Who knows? Maybe he'll show up in the 10th episode of Picard. Although that would kind of be lame. But yeah, we don't know. We don't know what happened to Lore, which is interesting. I don't know. I have no idea. Comic Doctor sent in a $3 super chat and says, hi, Rob, should comics abandon the fancy paper and return to newsprint? Price would drop, perhaps make them more accessible to newbies and kids. Well, Comic Doctor, I think that's not a bad idea, but unfortunately, I just think that we live in a different world now. You know, we have the technology that is at the disposal of children is amazing. And I just think that comics, look, if you're born into a world where the MCU exists, and not only do you have your 23 MCU movies, you're about to have 24 next month in May with Black Widow, and then at the end of the year we're going to get the Eternals, which I can't wait to see. It's going to be really hard to go back as a kid to find comic books when there's so many choices. There's digital comic books, there's so much. I mean, it might be a good idea. We've talked a lot about, on this show, releasing things in only graphic novel format. And I think there's something to be said there. I like, as you can see, as you can see here, I am surrounded by many omnibuses, and that way, those are the DCs, and I think that there's just a lot of interest in that, but I don't know if going back to newsprint is the idea. I don't know. I wonder. I don't know. I always like to see my face distorted at the end of this shot. Not a good look for me, to be honest. What are you gonna do? Anyway, where was I? Oh, let's see. Where was I? Zachary Shaw sent in a super chat and says, wasn't Picard supposed to be a one-and-done miniseries? Do you think it will get 2 or 3 seasons? Well, my man Mark Bernardin has been hired, and they are into season 2. They're making season 2 of Picard. He is a supervising producer. So I think, look, we saw Patrick Stewart actually was on The View and personally invited Whoopi Goldberg back to be on the show, to come back and play Guinan, and I'm sure that's going to happen, which is great. So Picard is definitely not a one-and-done show. I'm not sure what's going to happen at the end of this episode, or at the end of the season. I don't think they're going to kill him, because he's at least going to do season 2. I think he would have to, because, why not? Why not do that? But, we shall see. We shall see. You know what I haven't done? I haven't read a letter today, you guys. I haven't read a letter. I was talking too much. Let me see if there are letters that I can get to at the moment and read one. Let us see. I don't know if I have any letters left. I don't think I do. Or wait a minute. Oh, yeah, let's see. This letter is from Adam Ballou, and it's about James Bond. He wrote a letter yesterday. He's written another one. Hey, Rob, which James Bond film do you think has the most interesting plot? This is similar to a letter that I read yesterday. Typically, as I watched Bond films growing up, I wasn't as involved in the plot as I was watching 007 do his thing. License to Kill has a great story, in my opinion, but the movie's a bit weak. Like you've mentioned before, we have Felix Leiter getting murdered, which is a huge character moment. Next, Bond goes for revenge, climbing the ranks of bodyguards inside Franz Sanchez's criminal organization, eventually taking him out. It's a good way for a protagonist and antagonist to build off each other, but as a whole, I like The Living Daylights much better in regards to Timothy Dalton films. I'll also add GoldenEye. That story was pretty interesting, considering the time frame it came out. As far as bad plots go, I think The World Is Not Enough isn't interesting at all, but I can watch it over and over because there are great 007 moments. I listened to the soundtrack constantly when it first came out. So, Rob, what Bond film do you think has the most interesting plot, and what film has the most fun 007 moments? You know what? Maybe I did read this yesterday. I don't know, because I read another of Adam's letters, and I don't think I did. Maybe I did, but I'm going to answer that anyway because I liked it. Here's the thing. First of all, I agree with you about License to Kill. I was very disappointed in License to Kill. I love Living Daylights. I love Dalton as Bond in Living Daylights. I thought it was really, really good. It's the last James Bond movie with a John Barry score, which bums me out. But I like it. I like the whole opening of the Rock of Gibraltar, Schmiert Spionen, and all that war games. And I thought that was really great. And I like the storyline. I like, all the stuff in Afghanistan with the Mujahideen. It feels big. It feels like an epic Bond movie. License to Kill, They really pulled back. Most of the movie was shot in Mexico. Not that there's anything wrong with shooting a movie in Mexico, but you didn't have the globe-trotting aspect. And because License to Kill, again, it felt like you were chasing... At the time, when License to Kill was being made, Miami Vice was sort of wrapping up its 80s run. And Miami Vice was... It was really, really cool. And I thought License to Kill felt like a really goofy episode of Miami Vice. I mean, Talisa Soto and Carrie Lowell... Great Bond girls. My God, the sex appeal. Wow. I loved it. I loved Robert Davi as Fran Sanchez. I mean, it's a James Bond movie where Wayne Newton plays a preacher. I thought I didn't like Michael Kamen's score. I didn't like what they did to Felix Leiter. I don't Aretha Frank. Oh, it's not. Who does Gladys Knight did the opening title theme, which I kind of like, but the film just feels cheap. I mean, the set piece with the semi trucks, the tanker trucks, was kind of cool, but I felt it was a kind of a lame TV episode, and it just didn't look great. So I never did like License to Kill very much. It's one of my least favorite Bonds. What's interesting is I know a lot of people that love it, and it also came out in the summer of 1989 along with Star Trek V. So both Star Trek and James Bond, and let's face it, Ghostbusters 2 and Indiana Jones let me down that summer. I felt it was a summer of lackluster sequels, to be honest. I wanted more. I mean, everything seemed cheap. The summer of 89 seemed cheap. Tim Burton's Batman was great, but I mean, License to Kill, Last Crusade, Ghostbusters 2, Star Trek 5. I was like, why do these big budget franchise movies look like they're like one step up from canon movies? I didn't get it. I mean, but there's still, look, I still find a lot to like in License to Kill. I just don't love it. I don't love it. And then, okay, what did you ask? What Bond film do you think has the most interesting plot? Well, you know, I think I did talk about this. I say it was Thunderball. I thought Thunderball had a really interesting plot. I think I did read your letter yesterday, but there's another Bond letter. I can't. I'm so confused. So I thought Thunderball had a really interesting plot, a really interesting spy plot. I thought From Russia with Love, they felt like more grounded and down to earth. Look, I can't lie. I love You Only Live Twice. They're stealing spaceships from orbit and secreting them in a volcano base. Who doesn't love that? But again, it was a little sloppy, but I did like that plot. I like the plot of Spy Who Loved Me. You know, they're stealing, which is a remake of You Only Live Twice, really. They're stealing, instead of spaceships, nuclear submarines. Carl Stromberg is going to nuke the world so he can live on the bottom of the sea with his perfect people, which then again they remade again in Moonraker. And although I have to say, Casino Royale, which really goes back to the novel, I really like Casino Royale a lot. And I'll tell you, as much as it gets maligned, it's usually because of Denise Richards. I think The World Is Not Enough has a more interesting plot than people give it credit for. And most fun, there's so many fun James Bond moments. I have to say, like, one of my favorites so far, up until No Time to Die, I haven't seen it yet, the opening sequence for The World Is Not Enough, the Thames River Chase, is one of my favorite. I think it's one of the great sequences in any Bond film. It's the longest opening pre-title sequence, I believe, up until No Time to Die. So, yeah. I liked GoldenEye a lot. You mentioned Gold, but what's really interesting is that Alan, the movie Alan Cummings' part and Isabella Scorupco, there's like a 20-minute sequence in that movie where Bond just disappears from the film, which I think is weird when they go to Russia and they deal with the GoldenEye satellite. It's kind of bizarre, even though I like that movie, and I'm one of the people that loves Eric Serra's script, and I really like Tina Turner's song too. So there you go. And let's see. I think let's see. Zachary Shaw says, I read that. Star Wars Rocks sends it a tip. It says, "Hi, Rob. I know that you like most of the DC animated movies. What do you think of the latest one that they released, Red Son Superman?" Star Wars Rocks, I have yet to see Red Son Superman. I really want to see it. I want to see that and the Dark Side War that they have coming out, because I love Red Son and I love the Dark Side War comic, and I want to know if it's based on that miniseries. I'm looking forward to doing that. But I haven't seen Red Son yet. I haven't picked up anything new recently as far as physical media goes. So I'm behind, but I'm definitely going to get Red Sun. Did you like it? I mean, it looks cool to me. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that brings me to an end of Robservations episode number 357. My God. Wow. We're like a month and a half away from episode 400. How can that be? I was hoping I would be able to celebrate with No Time to Die, but I guess that is not to be. Oh, well, what are you going to do? Maybe for Black Widow or something. Yeah, but it would be Black Widow, right? We'd celebrate for Black Widow. Well, I want to thank you all for being here. I want to thank all of you imagination connoisseurs. I want to thank you for writing letters. I want to thank you for your support and your encouragement and all the new subscribers. I want to thank you. If you haven't subscribed, why haven't you? I'm getting ready to turn these into podcasts, so I will be releasing these shows in podcast form as well because everybody has been asking me to do that. So why not? Couldn't hurt, right? I want to thank my great moderating staff, beginning with my great friend, the mayor of Riverdale, Iowa, Mike Bodden. And then, of course, we have Detective Jim Boyers. And then we have, of course, Greg Smith, who is building a 1-to-1 scale snowspeeder that I've heard maybe might have some other use than the Emerald City Comic Con, whenever they choose to do that. And that would be exciting. You never know who doesn't want to see a full 1-to-1 scale snowspeeder, especially if it comes with a probe droid and a tauntaun. I would love to see that, wouldn't you? Maybe you'll get to see that someday. Who knows? And I also want to thank, of course, Jordy Lyons and Lewis Yu, rounding out the moderating staff. I have a great moderating staff. It makes this community so great, and I hope you guys appreciate that. You know, they don't get paid nearly enough or at all, but I appreciate them being here. I can't thank them enough for their time. And I want to thank you for being here. Of course, I will be back tomorrow on the John Campy Show. I will be back here in the afternoon with another episode of Robservations, the show about something. Please hit like. Please hit subscribe. Please hit the little notification bell. And I very much appreciate everything you guys do for me. Now, remember, every person you meet has a story to tell you have yet to hear. All you have to do is listen. And I really believe that. It's the guiding principle of my life. Every person has a story to tell you have yet to hear. All you have to do is listen. I believe it. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I will say this. As always, have a better day.